So good day, people. Today we talk about the ARF, the Adrenal Recovery Formula from Nutramed. Sorry, let me just get this right now. Kan julle my hoor?
Yes, ons hoor jou, Stefan.
Awesome. All right. So let's go with the Adrenal Recovery Formula. There we go. Right. So Adrenal Recovery Formula is specifically formulated for the recovery of the adrenals. So when we look at the adrenals, we see that the adrenal function is mainly focused on the HPA axis of hormones. Now, if you look at the picture, you will see that, let me just enlarge this. You will see in the HPA axis that we're looking at the hypothalamus in the brain, and we're looking at the pituitary gland in the brain, and then the adrenal gland. The adrenal gland is situated on the kidneys, and it's about a third of the size of the kidneys. And the adrenal glands, they produce hormones named after the major hormone being produced in the adrenal glands, like adrenaline and noradrenaline. Noradrenaline switches off the adrenaline. So if you had this big scare or fright and eye pupils wide open and the hair on your back stands up, and that's your adrenaline pumping. And then you say, oh, shucks, it was only the cat that went through the window. And then noradrenaline kicks in, and you get this lame feeling of relief. So these hormones, they work so quickly that just with one pump of the adrenal glands, we have adrenaline in the bloodstream, and the body reacts within a part of a second. That's how quickly your body can respond to hormones. One of my favorite hormones also being produced in the adrenal glands is cortisol, the body's own cortisone, also known as the stress hormone. And then also DHEA, which is seen as the body's battery. So you can see the adrenal gland, the hormones of the adrenal gland, it's got huge capabilities and is linked to other hormones, including the thyroid. So it starts with a feedback mechanism. We produce these hormones, they get into cycle, then they go to the brain, and the brain picks up the hormone and responds to it by sending a message back to the adrenal glands and say, listen, the fight is over, we can stop now. And then we stop producing the adrenaline. So this whole feedback cycle is what we call the HPA axis. H for hypothalamus, P for pituitary gland, and then the adrenal gland. So the hypothalamus in the brain, which is the stress control center of the brain, produces a hormone called CRH, and this stimulates the pituitary gland right front in the brain, and it produces ACTH, which then stimulate the adrenal glands. Then the pituitary gland also produces thyroid stimulating hormone. You can see that the same gland that produces the stress response also responds towards the thyroid. And the thyroid then activates fat metabolism, which converts then fat. It helps us to release fat from the fat cells so that we can utilize the fat then as a fuel and convert it in the liver or in the muscles into glucose. And there we go. We've got energy, we've got petrol pumping, we've got the battery functioning right there in the adrenal glands called the DHEA. And then we can pump our immune system because the cortisol works then directly towards the immune system. So the HPA axis in turn modulates the immune response because it is the response right from the brain to the pituitary gland, right through to the adrenal glands, and it sets off and releases the immune system so that it can function at a quick rate and so that we can be protected against invaders. So it modulates the immune response with high levels of cortisol, resulting in a suppression of immune and inflammatory reactions. So if you can remember from a previous talk, we said that the immune system is there to defend us, and especially genes like interleukin-6 and CRP4, they respond to any invaders by creating an inflammatory response. But too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. So overstimulation of the immune system can lead to a cytokine storm, which we have seen now with the COVID, and that's the people ending up in hospital with damage done by their own immune systems. So overactive immune response is a problem. And the HPA axis helps to modulate this immune response. And by modulating the immune response, we just create the right amount of inflammation to help the body to go into healing and or to get rid of invaders, microorganisms, etc. So this helps to protect the organism from a lethal overactivation of the immune system and minimize tissue damage from inflammation. So this is directly in the pathway of COVID, and we've seen with post-COVID damage that people sit with lung fibrosis. They even sit now with nerve damage, smell, taste still gone after months after COVID. And this is then one of the problem areas of COVID, that it can attack the HPA axis. And therefore, we have to help the HPA axis to come back into recovery. So if we sit with a depleted adrenal function, we will see that we call it adrenal fatigue. We don't have enough firepower from the adrenal gland, and therefore we will lack in energy, immune resistance, vitality is gone, and enjoyment of life is gone. And you can see it's also called the 21st century stress syndrome. This is if you want to read a good book on adrenal fatigue, this is one of the books that I can recommend. Dr. James L. Wilson from Australia, a very easy book to read. I like it because there's pictures in it, and it's in layman terms, and it tells us also why do the medical fraternity overlook adrenal fatigue and why they should actually treat it and not overlook it. So adrenal fatigue is thought to occur when the adrenals have been overworked to a degree that they can no longer secrete levels of cortisol that are adequate for optimal function. So cortisol actually regulates the immune system. It also helps to control blood sugar levels, helps to control the blood pressure, the immune system, and it protects our body against excess insulin that cause type 2 diabetes. So cortisol, a huge function in the immune system and regulation of the immune system. And with adrenal fatigue, we will see then that the function of cortisol is under threat. So in stage 1 and 2, we will see an overproduction of cortisol, which can lead to overstimulation of the immune system. And that is when you are entering this fight and flight situation, you're burning the candle both ends and you're producing too much cortisol. Stage 3 and 4, we see a drop in cortisol, especially in stage 3. And that's when the drop in cortisol comes. And in stage 4, a depletion of cortisol. And that's the danger part. When you reach stage 4, a depletion in cortisol, it can take the body up to 2 years, the adrenals, up to 2 years to recover. And that's where we take shortcut with our drips. And we can shorten that period to 2 months and not 2 years. So when the adrenal glands are depleted, we will see a poor fight-flight response. Not enough adrenaline, not enough cortisol, and the immune system goes absolutely for a huge dip. And in my sense, I think this is one of the major killers during the COVID pandemic. When people are depleted in hospitals, they were just put on a ventilator where they should have looked after their adrenal function. And with adrenals totally in a burnout state, there's no regulation of the immune response, and your own immune system can cause death. So potential stressors include environmental, dietary influences, as well as anxiety and emotional stress caused by unhappiness in your marriage and a very dreadful wife, etc. Okay, so the adrenal fatigue, I see that definitely it's a big problem in any social environment where there is inequity, and we see it in the workplace where people are really bullied during the COVID period, the pandemic time, where people are overworked and overloaded with work. Businesses are short-staffed because they use this opportunity to get rid of a lot of people in a legal way. That's why we sit with 46% unemployment in this country. And the other people that stayed behind are totally overworked because they need to do 3-4 other people's work. So adrenal fatigue is absolutely part and parcel of where we stand with COVID at this stage and in South Africa. So adrenal fatigue symptoms, fatigue, particularly upon waking. So I stand up in the morning dead tired. You can sleep well, you stand up dead tired. Sleeplessness is also one of the problems with adrenal fatigue. People are so tired they actually cannot fall asleep. You think that tiredness will make you fall asleep, but the adrenals keep you awake because the body is still fighting for survival. And then the people with warrior genes, they lie at night and they think of what I can do tomorrow to sort out my problems. And so they'll just lie awake. And the next morning, they're still dead tired. And even though if they sleep, they wake up tired. With intermittent crashes, so even through the day, I wake up tired, but I gained some speed, say around here from 10 o'clock, but around 1 o'clock, I'm depleted again. Oh, thanks God, it's time for lunch. Have something to eat because you think it's your blood sugar. No, it's not your blood sugar. And then you feel better, but 3 o'clock you hit that ditch again. And then you fight that last part at work up till 5 o'clock, go home. And when you get home, you're so tired you don't actually want to eat, but you can't fall asleep. Or you take a power nap on the couch and then you're awake. So throughout the day, it's just ups and downs. And at night, we're still resting. Poor stress response and mood regulation. So we can see this person in a dead, tired situation at work, and tempers are flying because you're so tired you cannot stand it anymore. You're short-tempered and you just lose it. And that's not you. That's not who you are. And then usually women starts crying and they come and they say, I cannot go on like this anymore. That is adrenal fatigue. So cognitive issues or brain fog, the forgetfulness, can't memorize things, slow to pick up new information, poor immunity, they sick all the time. It's from one flu to another flu to a sinus. They just keep going. Feelings of anxiety and depression, obviously. I mean, that's very obvious. So going with these symptoms to your GP, you will end up with an antidepressant, sleeping pill, an antibiotic, and handshake. Then overuse of caffeine and other stimulants. So now they start pumping. You want to pump yourself up. And so during these crashes throughout the day, we keep on going with caffeine, keep on going with caffeine. If you wake up in the morning, I have to start with a coffee. During the day, it's a coffee, a Red Bull, and a Coke. They just keep on stimulating and overstimulating already fatigued adrenal. We need to recover the adrenal function. So adrenal recovery formula assists in the recovery of the adrenal function. It improves production of DHEA, the body's battery, recover your cortisol levels, recover from fatigue, and normalize your adrenal function. ARF doesn't work from the first capsule. It takes a while. Why? You are in a state of fatigue, and that's why without treatment, you might recover within 2 years' time. I've seen patients with adrenal fatigue for many years, especially if they stay in an unhealthy, unhappy marriage. That keeps on draining you and you cannot recover. Married to a narcissist, there's no medicine for you except divorce. Your body will not recover from it. You will stay in adrenal fatigue. So it is very important to take the ARF for months, and you must tell the people at forehand, after the first month, you will start feeling better. But remember, on the one side, we want to pick you up, and at the other side, the work or the marriage is breaking you down again. So we just get to a place where we balance it out. You've got to do something about the marriage, about the work relationship, about you can't change the fuel price or Eskom or Zuma, but there's something that we need to do to get to a place of survival. And you've got to see a life coach or somebody that can help you to improve the way that you think, because it's the way that you think from the hypothalamus in the brain, the stress control center, that burns out your adrenals through the HPA axis. So it's important to get help on this side, and on the other side, this will give ARF the opportunity to help and bring up your adrenal function again to a level where you can survive. So what is adrenal recovery formula then actually? ARF is a natural supplement that assists in the recovery of the adrenal gland function. It naturally supports the production and maintenance of several adrenal hormones, like I've said. A very important fact is that all adrenal hormones are produced from cholesterol, right? So in about 2-3 weeks from now, I'm going to work on the cholesterol formula and explain that one to you. But all the adrenal hormones, very important, is produced from cholesterol. So the brain will tell the liver, we are under stress. I need hormones in the adrenals. So pump us some cholesterol, please. And in that stressful situation, the liver immediately starts to produce more cholesterol. That's why people going in for an operation, people going into hospital, any trauma, etc., and they test their cholesterol in hospital. Oh, your cholesterol is high. So by the way, your cholesterol is high. Here's some statins. You've got to lower your cholesterol. Oh, and you're a diabetic too. Your glucose level is way too high. So you're a diabetic. So most of the people find out in hospital that they've got a cholesterol problem and a diabetes problem. No, bull dust rubbish, because the cholesterol being produced by the liver in support of the production of most needed hormones in the body. And by taking your cholesterol away, you will not produce those hormones and you will stay in a state of adrenal fatigue. The liver will stop producing higher amounts of cholesterol once the adrenals are in position again and back to normal function again. And the same goes with the pancreas and the glucose. All controlled by cortisol, which is an adrenal hormone. So the adrenal gland hormones play a very important role in the function of the endocrine system. And that is a communication system through hormones. Right. It's also, when we look, let me just go back to the endocrine system. We know that estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone is also produced in the adrenals, not just by the genitals. So when you look at women going into menopause and the ovaries are not working anymore, where do they get estrogen from? If you test their blood, say, well, your estrogen levels are lower, but you're still pumping. Where do you produce it from? It's from the adrenals. So if you go into adrenal fatigue and into menopause, double whammy, then you will lack in hormones. And then the first thing they give to you is hormone replacement therapy. So to get out of hormone replacement therapy, pump up your adrenals first. So the warning for women going into menopause, when you start seeing the first signs of hot flushes, etc., start taking ARF so that you can pump up your adrenals so that they can help producing estrogen and progesterone. The adrenal ratio. Two of these hormones must work in relation with each other to ensure energy metabolism and a healthy immune function. We look at the DHEA, the body's battery, in ratio to cortisol, the stress hormone. So do I have enough battery for the amount of lights that I've put on? So the more I stress and the more lights that I put on, do I have enough DHEA to cover the stress. The DHEA is seen as the hormonal battery, and cortisol is the stress hormone. The question is, do you have enough battery capacity for the amount of emotional, physical, and viral stress? So when COVID hit you hard, a lot of people in the COVID time died of stress. They were worried to death, and emotional depleted, physical stress, emotional stress, adrenals totally burned out, and there we go. So it would have been very helpful during the hospitalized phase to do something about your adrenals. So COVID-19 can also damage or reduce adrenal gland function, which leads to chronic post-COVID fatigue. If you look at this picture, we will see that the virus enters the cell and it wants to go, and then it untangles in a string, and the string goes through our ribosome, which then replicates the mRNA of the virus, and then the envelope protein, that's that little yellow part, where's this mouse? That little yellow part there connects again the mRNA and the membrane protein and the spike protein, and then it leaves as a healthy virus, poop, going to destroy the rest of the body. So what happens in the cell, this is inside the cell, it can also damage the mitochondria. And therefore, this can, for instance, be the adrenal gland. And when it comes into the adrenal gland, it can damage the production capacity of the adrenal gland. And therefore, we go into adrenal fatigue. So the host, the immune system of the host is then compromised, the energy system, the survival hormones, everything compromised. And this is what ARF can do for you during and after COVID, is to help to stabilize your adrenal function again. So the benefits of the adrenal recovery formula: ARF assist in the recovery of the adrenal gland function, recovery of adrenal fatigue syndrome, improves energy through the cortisol insulin interaction. So the cortisol helps to regulate the insulin and it stabilizes the insulin. So next week, when I'm going to talk about Insurex, you will see the interaction between ARF and Insurex. So it helps to normalize your cortisol levels, assist in the production of sex hormones like your estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. When you stabilize the hormones, the moods also come into place, and it plays a very important role then in weight loss. So the ARF, in lots of cases, I use the ARF also in conjunction with our meal replacement and the Insurex to assist people to lose weight that they've gained during the COVID of being sluggish, not exercising, work too hard, work all the time, no rest, and that's when you need the recovery from the ARF. So the dosage, we're looking at adults, 2 capsules in the morning, and children, we can go 1 capsule in the morning. Can children also have adrenal fatigue? Yes, for sure. For sure. It's that sluggish child that is quite emotional, especially during the teenage period, where the development of hormones plays an important role, and they are under stress at school, lots of schoolwork. They have to perform pressure, social pressure, relationship pressures, etc. and your teenager is in a state of fatigue and feel depressed, and that's when you go to the GP, he puts her on the pill and give you something to boost, and maybe a B vitamin shot, and you are the child is also attention deficit, put them on Ritalin, and still in a state of fatigue. They need adrenal recovery formula, and an awesome formula once you start using it, and it helps them for so many things that I see ARF as one of those must-take supplements when you are burning the candle both ends. Thank you, people. Is there any questions concerning the product?
Kan dit 'n mens se bloeddruk verhoog omrede dit daar op die nier se gland werk?
Okay. Question, can it increase your blood pressure because it sits right there on the kidneys? It's got nothing to do with the kidneys. So the Afrikaans name is actually not as good as the English name. The Afrikaans name is byniere, that sit by die niere. It's got nothing to do with the kidneys. It just sits on the kidneys. All right. So it's there to with its own function. It could have been also placed on another organ, but it's there on the kidneys, and it sits still right there in the kidneys and produces its hormones. Cortisol helps to regulate the blood pressure. So in a state of adrenal fatigue, we will see that people in adrenal fatigue have low blood pressure, and that's part of the fatigue is the low blood pressure. And they can do whatever they want to do. They've got this low blood pressure. When they stand up quickly, they just pass out. They faint. And the fact that the cortisol also regulates the blood sugar and the blood pressure gives you a double whammy. So you can have low blood sugar and low blood pressure. And that's why people are so dead tired in stage 4 adrenal fatigue.
Baie dankie.
Any other questions? Okay, let me just stop the recording.